Good evening and welcome to the 2021 Auburn School Board Forum brought to you by Cayuga Community College and the Citizen. I'm your moderator, Guy Cosentino. On May 18th, voters across the state of New York will go to the polls to vote on school budgets for the city of Auburn and the Auburn Enlarged School District. That is about an $83.8 million budget, which is a 3.5% spending increase in their budget, and that's roughly up $3 million from the year before. Voters will also get to vote for candidates for their local school boards. In Auburn, the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. You do not have to be a registered voter to vote, but you must be a citizen of the United States, at least 18 years old, and have lived in the district for 30 days prior to the 18th. Voters can vote at the junior high, better known as East Middle, from before, for many of us who are older, Casey Park, Owasco, and Seward Elementary Schools. As has been the tradition for the college and the Citizen, we've hosted a number of forums from City Council to Congress, the county legislature, county treasurer, mayor, sheriff, and the state legislature as a public service for voters in the community. Three seats are up this year. The incumbent Sam Giangreco, who has served 3.5 years, nearly 4 terms, Kathy Rhodes, who is completing her third 3-year term, and Ian Phillips, who is completing his first 3-year term. They have all decided to seek re-election and are with us in the studio by Zoom today. They are joined by 5 others who are seeking terms on the Auburn board. They are Matteo Bartolotta, Rachel Czyz, Nate Garland, Patrick Mahunik, and Isabelle Wellauer. Tonight we will be bringing you a forum that has 7 of the 8 candidates. We may have an 8th one join us. He has a work responsibility that he could not get out of, but he is going to try to join us remotely as well. In the past, candidates have been invited by a letter in their packet with the rules of what we're doing, but unlike in the past with COVID-19, we cannot have all 8 candidates in the studio at one time with Mr. Boyer and myself. We're doing this all by Zoom. The candidates have connected to our studio. We have also decided to put their giving 2-minute opening statements in the order they reply to our invitation. That order will be reversed for closing statements as well. And as our standard practice, we will rotate the questions to who they go. We want to introduce you to today's questioner, as well as the candidates that have qualified for the May 21st election. Jeremy Boyer is the executive editor of The Citizen, whose weekly column occurs on the Citizen's editorial page every Thursday. He will be asking the questions as usual. Our candidates in the order of their opening statements are Patrick Mahunik, Kathy Rhodes, Sam Giangreco, Ian Phillips, Isabelle Wellauer, Matteo Bartolotta, Rachel Czyz, and Nate Garland. Again, Mr. Bartolotta could not join us because of work commitment, but may tune in at some point. We do want to welcome all of you to this forum and thank you for experimenting with us as we try this new Zoom format. The position of a school board member, by the way, is unpaid. We've asked Mr. Boyer to ask questions of any of the candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to those questions. And then we have limited the number of follow-ups we've had and asked candidates to respond in their follow-up questions that they receive. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes to respond to a question, as well as we will notify them when they have 30 seconds left and ask them to finish their statement or wrap up at 2 minutes. The candidates will also be starting with their opening statements, so we'd like to turn to Patrick Mahunik, who has 2 minutes. Mr. Mahunik, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Cosentino. Thank you, Mr. Boyer. Running for school board and sitting on a school board can be a thankless job at times. And as Guy mentioned, the pay isn't all that great. So kudos to everybody for wanting to make a difference and do what's good for kids. So the reason that I'm running for school board is I'm a lifelong resident of Auburn. I graduated from Auburn High School. I went on to college at Cortland and became a history teacher, and then went into administration eventually. So in school administration, currently I'm the director of secondary education down at Newfield Central School District. My 5 children have all been products of the Auburn School District. 2 are graduates. 1 will graduate this year. 2 of them have have gone to school at Cayuga Community College and have moving on to 4-year schools. And 1 will be graduating this summer and will move on to play football at Nassau Community College. My son Patrick, I believe, has worked with Guy a couple times. He's into communications, so very proud of all the work he's done up there, and he's moving on to Plattsburgh. So my kids and my family have benefited from the Auburn School District, and I would just want to make sure that we continue to do what's in the best interest of our families and our kids. And that's really my motivating factor. I've seen some things in the past couple of years that, I feel like we could do things a little bit differently. I do have a vast experience, a different experience than most candidates. I served for 12 years as a Cayuga County legislator. I served as chairman of many of the committees, including Ways and Means, which oversees the budget, the development, and oversees the spending of funds for the county. So I have experience in that realm. I also served as the chairman of the legislature for a year, and working with the new county administrator and trying to revamp that whole process. So again, I have that different experience that can speak to a lot of different things. I was also on the board of trustees at the college, so I had a little bit of experience of being on a board and the role of a board.
Thank
and
you.
the last thing I would say, I'm good? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mahunik.
I'll get to it.
We will now turn to Kathy Rhodes, who is the current, I believe, board president of the Board of Education. Ms. Rhodes.
I'm not the current board president. I'm a past board president.
Past board
However, no, that's okay. I just wanted to correct that. I'm running for the school board because I recognize that a school system is a reflection of the community. I understand the impact it has on a child's future, particularly in the type of education students can get here at Auburn. Families and individuals who move to Auburn look closely at our school system, and they want to see what we can offer our students. Auburn schools can offer their children varied opportunities, diverse experiences, solid foundation for their future. It's my goal to help not only maintain that, but to support the growth of that foundation. It's important for our students to get a strong reading and language and math, technology skills to compete in our world today. I've been on the board for 9 years, as Guy said. I have worked on several of our committees, our policy committees, the scholarship committee. I worked on also in working with the Auburn Education Foundation. So, I have done many things on the board. I hope to continue those things. Being an educator for many years, I believe that I can be a voice for a strong educational system for our children. I participated, as I said, with implementing many of the goals, boards, and objectives. It's a responsibility to maintain and be knowledgeable of perspectives and opinions of all people on the board. So I hope to continue that, and we work for that in the future.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Sam Giangreco, who I think may be the longest, he or Mr. Andre is the longest serving member of the current board. Mr. Giangreco. You may have to take your mute off if we can't hear you.
You hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay.
You have 2 minutes.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's good to see everybody again. And I am just thrilled to be here again. I wasn't going to run again, but I decided to because of all that transpired with the COVID-19 and, frankly, kids coming up to me voicing their concerns. And I felt I have been dedicated to the causes of the kids and this community. And I feel I've done a good job all my years on the board so far. And I can still contribute on many, many facets of that. I care deeply about our kids. And I know that this past year has been extremely difficult for teachers and kids, as we all know, and parents. However, they're kind of back on track right now. And somebody asked me if I'm listening to kids. Yes, that's why I'm on the board, without a doubt. And I listen to the kids' concerns, and I try as a board member to do the best possible thing I can do to help them along. I'm also the chairman of the facilities committee for the past 5-6 years. A lot of people don't know, but this summer we got 5 buildings under construction, which is going to enhance the buildings as far as comfort for the kids coming into the building, but mostly for safety and security for staff and the children. Also addressing some of the environmental concerns with temperatures and so on and so forth. I would like to stay on to see that finished. I have an expertise in what we've done so far, and I'm quite aware of everything that's going to transpire over the next few months. So I'd like to stay on and see that completed in its entirety. But most of all, doing everything we can to get these kids back up to speed. And that means whatever we need to spend. And right now we're in a position to do just that. And to give them the resources that they need to get back on track. That's paramount. And I love the community. I want to see our kids succeed and graduate.
Thank you, Mr. Giangreco. We'll now hear from Ian Phillips, who is just completing his first 3-year term on the board. Mr. Phillips, welcome.
Thanks, Guy. I'm proud to be an Auburn kid. I grew up on Orchard Street and running up and down Swift Street and Anna Street at my grandparents' house. When I was little, my mom worked full-time at night and went to nursing school at CCC during the day. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was a handful, both for my mom and for many of my teachers. I was not a diligent student. I was not always a cooperative student. But what was consistent, though, was that teachers found the time for a kid like me. They took the time to see in me the potential that I didn't always see in myself. In recent years, things have gotten very tough for our district. When I ran a few years ago, after the latest round of cuts, in that round, 28 positions were eliminated. Art and music instruction was reduced. We're spending nearly $7,000 less per every one of our students, 30% less than the state average. The district has cut 20% of its instructional staff over the last decade. We've closed my beloved West Middle School. All of this means bigger class sizes and less time for what might really reach those harder to reach kids. This year, COVID laid the realities of more than a decade of underfunding bare for our students and families. Our already overstretched staff was asked to teach remote, then hybrid, then in person, sometimes all at the same time. Our parents were frustrated when they saw neighboring districts with smaller class sizes, and in one case, a whole extra building to get and stay in person more quickly than we were able to. I'm proud of the work that we've done with the advocacy committee to bring students, parents, and staff together to fight for fair funding. We collected thousands of petitions, wrote dozens of letters to the editor, and made trips to Syracuse and Albany to deliver our message to the governor and legislature. This year, we're finally on the right path, and I want to help continue to spearhead that work from the board. We're bringing back those cuts to art and music. We're adding counselors in each of our elementary schools to help with our kids' social and emotional needs, and we're hiring reading and math specialists to ensure our students don't fall behind. I'm running because I want to give back to the district that has given me so much and provide that support to our educators, our students that meant so much to me. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Isabelle Wellauer, who is a first-time candidate. We'd like to welcome you to the Zoom forum. You have 2 minutes as well.
Thank you, Guy. I so appreciate being able to be here. And I'd like to say congratulations to all of us that have decided to run. Also, I want to extend a huge heartfelt thank you to Kathleen and Sam and Ian, who have spent the last several years really faithfully serving our community in this board. And that has not gone unnoticed, especially this year with all of the challenges that we have faced as a community and as a school district. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for all of your efforts and your passion and your love for our kids and our teachers. So I am not from Auburn. I am from Syracuse. I moved here about 15 years ago, and I have 4 children, 3 of whom I biologically had. An 18-year-old daughter, Leah. I have a 14-year-old daughter, Chloe, 12-year-old son, Michael, and a 2-year-old foster son named Tymir, who we just adore and we feel very blessed to be able to help raise. So I do have some experience in working with kids in schools. I have a degree in dance and teaching literacy through dance programs in public schools all around the country, really. And I'm currently a business owner in our area. And what inspired me to run for this board are my children, specifically my daughter, Leah, who has served as one of the student representatives this year. And just kind of walking alongside her through the process has really opened my eyes to the weight and responsibility that our school board has for our kids and our community. And I just feel extremely motivated to roll up my sleeves and work for our families. There are many challenges ahead that I feel our board is facing. And I think our community is in need of a little bit of change, and that's reflective in how many of us are interested in running for this board. I'm ready to help find some solution-oriented strategies to help make the changes that are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from another first-time candidate. That's Rachel Czyz, who is joining us remotely as well. And you have 2 minutes to make your opening statement as well. Welcome.
Thank you, Guy. Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Czyz. I'm married, and we have 6 children ranging from 9 to 19. Next year, we'll once again have children at each level of the district. I have a degree and background in education, and I've spent the past 10 years navigating policies and procedures for children with unique learning challenges. I have held 3 positions as a board member for nonprofits. I volunteered in Auburn since '08 working with children. I have a unique and fresh perspective, and I'm familiar with the needs our children are currently facing. In our 10 years navigating the district, I've seen many curriculum changes, and as a parent of a few children with learning issues, I know it is very hard to navigate that journey. I believe we need to further open pathways of communication between parents, teachers, administration, and our children. I would like to help bridge the gap between lifelong educators and our community. I would like to support policies and procedures that open up communication within the district. I'd like to see more transparency and accountability in how our budget and our curriculum are best meeting the needs of our children. Concerning the budget, I want to ensure that every decision made is grounded in what is best for the children. I believe we need to continue fighting for our state funding, knowing it is disproportionately against Auburn. We need to continue focusing to right size it. I'm running because I want to be a voice for our children and the parents of the district. I'm an advocate for our amazing teachers and support the work that they do. I'm fighting for our children and for the families of the district and the taxpayers. It's my desire to ensure that every decision, policy, and procedure the board makes is grounded in what is best for the children of the district.
Thank you, Ms. Czyz, for your opening statement. We'll now hear from Nate Garland, our final candidate who we know is on the Zoom call right now. Mr. Garland, welcome, and you have 2 minutes to do our final opening statement.
Thank you very much, Guy, and thank you to all the other candidates that are participating in this forum. I'm in the privileged position of going last, so I would like to essentially just take what people have said about how wonderful our school district is and how hard we all want to work towards making it even better, and use that as my own words, because really I think we're all rowing in the same direction here, and that's, I think, a testament to the people that are willing to take time out of their lives and hopefully serve at the board level. So kudos to everybody for that. I'm a native of Cayuga County. I returned here in 2012 to serve as an assistant district attorney. My wife and I moved back to Fairhaven, where I grew up. In 2017, we moved to Auburn, largely, as Kathy Rhodes said, largely because of the school system. We liked the diversity and the inclusive nature that the school system provided, and that was a good decision. We love Auburn. We love the community. However, when our kids were in school, we found we were a little bit surprised by the class sizes. The fact that children are in classes of 28, 29 kids. That's not how school was when we were all children. And referring back to something that Ian said, I think that what happens when class sizes are that large is teachers are not empowered to give that attention to the kid that might need it the most. So that's what I want to do. I'm assistant corporation counsel now for the city of Auburn. I advise our local boards and city council on legal issues within their purview. And I want to bring that expertise to the Auburn Enlarged City School District as a board member. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. We'll now that we've had opening statements, we'll now turn to Mr. Boyer, who can ask questions of all of you or individually, as we've outlined in our board packet. But Mr. Boyer, who's the executive editor of The Citizen, welcome back, even if it is remote.
Hi, thanks for appreciate it, and thank you to the college and Guy for figuring out a way to get this done, because it's like so many things in this pandemic, it's not easy to do, but I think it's hopefully going to be really beneficial for voters out there. And thanks to all you candidates for stepping up to run and taking time to do this today. I have basically two questions related to the pandemic, which is a very broad topic. But basically, I'm going to ask you first in the first round to kind of take a look back and critique how we've done in Auburn in dealing with the pandemic while serving the students. Just to kind of review, it's been a long year for everyone. To go way back to the summer, we started with Auburn deciding to go to a phased-in reopening, which generated some discussion and some concern from some people. Once we got to fully reopened, I guess you would call that, it was a hybrid model where students were part-time in school buildings and part-time working remotely with the option to be full remote. We had to have a pause in the holiday season from late to mid-December to mid-January. Got back to hybrid, and thankfully I think it was April 19th, all students were back in buildings that wanted to be back in buildings. So it's been a lot to navigate, and a lot of decisions had to be made. The board had to, give direction and give guidance. So I'd like to just kind of go back and give me your thoughts on how the district has handled things so far. What's worked well and what could have been done better.
Well, oddly enough, the first three people who will be dealing with this question are people who currently serve on the board. So the first 2 minutes will go to Kathy Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes.
Thank you. Looking back at everything that's gone on, much of the decision making was left up to the health department. The health department led our decisions, and we really had to follow everything that the health department said. It was very difficult because when you would turn on TV, you could see, well, Syracuse is doing this, or another school district is doing that. But we had to follow the Cayuga County Health Department. And I think that was one of the hardest things for all of us, because when we did have discussions with parents in the summer, I heard them. I know they wanted their kids back, but I also know what the health department's telling us and what we had to follow through them. I think communication-wise was done the best we possibly could. Could we do better? Anybody can do better. I mean, that's something that you always have to remember. Can we do better? We learn from our mistakes. And this was the first time for a pandemic in our city. And I think, in all honesty, that much of it was we did the best we could possibly do. I always know that we can do better.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. We'll now hear from Mr. Giangreco. You have 2 minutes on the issue of looking back at how the district has handled the COVID situation. Mr. Giangreco.
Yes. Well, it was a heck of a ride, and it still is for the most part. We woke up every day, and a new decision was made, or a new guideline was brought forth. It was absolutely crazy. I have to give kudos to our superintendent, who kept everybody abreast in the community with robocalls and things of that nature. It seemed to work quite a bit for people to understand what was happening. A lot of kudos to our teachers to putting up with all the different facets they had to do to give education to our kids. It was an incredible job by them, and I'm sure it was very taxing on all of them. And I can't thank them enough either. We tried to do the best we can. Like I say, things changed by the day. Sometimes within the day, even changed a couple of times. And so we had to grapple with that all the time. And I think as a board, we came together and tried to discuss things and do the best things possible. For the most part, I think we did that. I know there were people that were dissatisfied with some moves we made, either not bringing the kids back or bringing them back too soon. No matter which way you turn, you're always going to have opposition on the other side. And it is one of those catch-22s that you could not avoid. So we did the best we could. For the most part, we got through it. But again, the thing now is to get these kids back up to speed, and we have the resources to do that. And let's get on board and do it quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Giangreco. We'll now hear from Board Member Ian Phillips. Mr. Phillips, you have 2 minutes.
I certainly think everyone in the district did the best they could in a pretty difficult situation. I think the thing that I would add to what Kathy and Sam said would be, we got to remember, this is like, to use a sports analogy, we're playing basketball with 3 people on the court, right? We have a third less funding for almost 20 years. So when we close West Middle, and we've got another district that has a whole extra building, and they already have class sizes of like 14, 15, 16, and we have class sizes of 30. This is what kind of made it so we couldn't meet the 6-foot spacing and put, split classes so that we have enough educators in each of those buildings. So I don't think anyone was happy with how things went this year. I know our educators weren't happy. I know our parents weren't happy. Our students, including our student representatives that sit on the board with us, struggled this year. It's really unfortunate. I think that while maybe this pandemic couldn't have been prevented, I would have liked to see our state government prioritize getting kids back into schools before bars and other places opened. And so, we're kind of at the ground level on the school board, and I want to acknowledge everybody who's deciding to run, but we're kind of like at the whim of all the decisions that kind of take place above us, and then trying to make the best of that bad situation. And especially in Auburn, with that underfunding, it made it extremely difficult for us here.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. We'll now hear from Ms. Wellauer. You will have 2 minutes on this issue of looking back at how the district dealt with COVID-19.
Yes, thank you. I am a firm believer in public school education for our kids, and I think for the majority of students, in-person learning is the most effective approach. I will be honest and say I'm not a huge fan of the virtual and remote learning. And I do feel that bringing the students back up to speed academically, helping them to restore their mental and emotional health, and getting them reintegrated into all that comes with being in school is definitely a top priority. And looking back, I absolutely recognize that the school board was really had to operate in a manner that was in line with all the mandates that were given to them. I know that their hands were tied, and I'm sure that there were many situations where they wish they could have made a different decision. But given the rules and and all of the policies that they had to follow. I do think that they did the absolute best that they possibly could under the circumstances. I felt like every day there was some new information that came out, and certainly we all, as parents, we all had to adapt and adapt quickly, as did the teachers and the students. Many of us, of course, work and are juggling, many children and many moving parts. So I think it was initially extremely challenging for all of us. But again, we all did the best that we could, and it was a bit of a rough start, I will say. Getting used to things like Google Classroom and all of the emails and everything that the kids had to navigate through, and helping them with their homework and helping them with their schooling actually throughout the day and in the evening. Kind of filling that teacher role for our kids was extremely challenging for those of us parents who had a lot of other things going on as well. So it was a bit of a rough start, but I do fully appreciate our superintendent. I felt that the communication to us parents was excellent and spot on. I felt like we were made aware of things as they were happening, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wellauer. We'll now hear from Ms. Czyz.
I think did some things really well. I think there were some areas that were lacking a lot. I think the best point is that our kids were kept safe and healthy, and our as a whole, our community, our kids have not dealt with it like other communities have. So I think that's possibly, obviously a win for us. I think that the phase-in was good in the beginning of the year. I felt like it rolled out well. I feel like the kids were kept out too long to go into full-time. I think that it was really hard as a parent during those times to get our voices heard for our concerns for our kids. We had 5 different kids this year, 6 kids last year that we were navigating through it. One being a senior and some being in elementary school. And a few of our kids have IEPs, and that was really hard because the digital learning did not work for them. And no matter how much we requested, we could not get them back into school. We could not get the attention that they needed. We couldn't get access to their teacher aides that they should have had, and all those things. So that was that really held us back. It held our kids back this year. So that's was a downside for me. I think a lot of our kids were struggling across the board in our city with mental health issues. You see that a lot, and I don't know that that was addressed as appropriately as it could have been by the school district. And I think too, the vast, this year dealing with 5 different kids, we were dealing with 5 different teachers, beginning of 5 different teachers. You throw the high schoolers in there, and that's a whole lot more teachers than 5. But every teacher had just had a different way they rolled stuff out. They had a different way they collected stuff. They had a different way. So navigating through that was literally a nightmare. And teachers, I have one kid that is 9 that sat in front of a computer screen from 9 to 3 while his teacher was teaching, which was awesome. And then high schoolers that have nothing all day. So I think it was difficult in that realm too.
Thank you, Ms. Czyz. We'll now hear from Mr. Garland. You have 2 minutes on this issue of the look back at the last year on COVID.
Thanks, Guy. Well, I'll start by saying I'm not really interested. I don't think any of us are in Monday morning quarterbacking. What it was an unprecedented, terrifying situation that we put in a year ago. And I want to echo the sentiment that everyone's expressed. That all in all, looking back, I think people did the best they could, acting in the best interests of children. As part of my job, I've read every executive order for the last year and figured out how they apply to the actions and the governance of the city of Auburn. And I imagine that there's someone in the Harriet Tubman building that's been doing the same for the school. And I can tell you that it is really tough. So kudos to everyone again for taking on an impossible situation. What I can tell you, Guy, is what I experienced when I shared our home office with my 11-year-old son. I got a chance to see him engage in schooling really for the first time, and it was amazing to see what virtual learning did for my son. He was a straight A student, always has been. One of those kids you kind of put on cruise control and figure, well, life's going to work out for them. Realizing, I didn't realize until I was in the same room with him that he just didn't quite understand learning to get a better understanding of the world. It was just learn this, to regurgitate on a test. Learn this next thing to regurgitate on a test. And with the small, it was strange, but with a small classroom setting that virtual learning allowed for, and I was able to observe firsthand, I could see my kid engaged in learning. Again, my straight A student engaged in learning in a way that he had never had been before. So I attribute that to small classrooms.
Thank you, Mr.
More than
Ball.
anything, and I think that we can maybe take that lesson going forward and hopefully apply it district-wide by lowering class sizes.
Thank you. Mr. Garland, we'll now hear from Mr. Mahunik. This is the last person on this particular round of questioning. Mr. Mahunik.
Yeah, similar to everybody else, I commend the district for how they handled the situation and the fact that they had the kids back in the building and schools are open. Being on the front lines of this, as this was all unfolding, it started on Friday, March 13th. The fact that I can still remember that day and that phone call at 3:15 when they said we were shutting down the schools, what happened after that was completely unprecedented and nothing that anybody in education ever signed up for. So I commend the teachers, the administrators, the maintenance people, the custodians, the bus drivers at First Student. Regulations were changing by the hour sometimes. And being one of the people that worked on the reopening plan down here in Newfield, I know how much hard work that those people had to put in to make sure that we checked off all the boxes and we made sure we were opening up in the safest way possible. And we were not going to compromise the health and safety of anybody. And that's what Auburn did. They didn't compromise the health and safety of their people. They didn't compromise the health and safety of their students. They did it when it was appropriate, it was right, and they felt like they could pull it together and get it done the right way. Yes, we all want kids back in school. Yes, we all want smaller class sizes. However, we want it done the right way, and I think that's the role of the board, is to look at the plans and say, and I credit this board for doing exactly that. Looking at the plan of reopening and say, okay, now it makes sense to do this, and now it makes sense. We all want the kids back in the classroom. Now it makes sense. We can separate them. We can do the social distancing. The guidelines and restrictions have changed. It's very difficult to maneuver because you're getting directives from the governor's office, as Nate mentioned, the executive orders that were coming out. You also have the state health department, and then you have your local health department, and you have to meet all those guidelines. And sometimes they contradict each other. Last thing I'll say, just as far as a changing timeline, I got a memo about graduation and what we had to do to have an outdoor graduation. I read it to my office staff, and I said, don't worry about it. It's going to change by tomorrow. That was at 3 o'clock on a Friday night. At 5:15, I got another updated guideline. It changed that quickly. And that's the battle that everybody had to fight all year long. So I commend and appreciate the work of everybody that was involved in this.
Thank you, Mr. Mahunik. Mr. Boyd?
Sorry about that. A little late on the draw, the mute button there. But so after that, my next intention is to kind of spin it forward because while there's tremendous progress and kids are back and people are getting vaccines and hopefully case levels are going to continue going down, it's probably still not going to be quite normal this summer and into the fall. So as a board, as the people that want to be on this board on July 1st, what does the district need to do this summer and into the fall to ensure a successful school year coming up, 2021-22 school year?
We'll start with Mr. Giangreco running down the line. Mr. Giangreco, you have 2 minutes on the issue of the future and COVID.
Well, we're not out of the woods yet, obviously. We got to have, everybody has to continue to follow the guidelines, obviously. And, we're going to insist on that as much as we can as a board. I know that we're getting good cooperation from our staff and our families and students, and we've got to obviously continue that. As I stated earlier, we've got 5 buildings under construction this summer. It's going to be a task in itself because we have to get these schools open on time for the fall season. That's why I'd like to stay on to see this through, because I've spent a lot of time with the preparations for all that's going to happen this summer. You're going to see our buildings not only become secure, but more welcoming for our students and protective for our students and staff. That's important, as well as the health, obviously. So we work in conjunction with the health department. Everything seems to be going in the right direction, but we've got to be vigilant on that. And we need the community's cooperation on this too. Everybody'd like to get back to normal, obviously, but we've got to protect our kids, and we've got to maintain our guidelines and show an example to our children, obviously, because that's what's very important. We have to be on the same line going forward, and we'll see what happens. But the best thing I can tell you after that is let's just pray that it all does.
Thank you, Mr. Giangreco. We'll now hear from board member Ian Phillips on the year ahead.
Thanks, guys. So in the latest federal stimulus, there was a good amount of money that was sent to districts to make up for the challenges that we face this year, that they increased spending on safety, but also any type of falling behind in learning that our students might have had over the last year and a half. So we have some summer programs that we're rolling out, that we're excited to roll out. But beyond that, we have to make long-term investments, to kind of catch the social and emotional challenges that we're going to be facing. So I'm really proud that in this budget we're adding counselors in all of our elementary schools. This has been a very traumatic year for adults, students, everyone in our community, and I think we've just scratched the surface of what those challenges might be. So I think making those long-term investments so that we can really kind of wrap our arms around the children in our community is extremely important, and I think that this budget does that. So I'm really proud of this budget. But it's going to be a long-term challenge. This is unprecedented. So we're going to try to deal with it, and then we're going to adjust, and we're going to get better every single year. So I think that that's what it'll take. But I am looking forward to fully in-person school in the fall, and I think that that's what our community should expect, and that's what we should prepare for.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. We'll now hear from Ms. Wellauer on the issue of the plan going forward dealing with the pandemic.
Yes, I believe that the emotional and mental well-being of a child is just as important as their physical well-being. And so I would hope that the board can be unified despite a variety of perspectives and opinions. I would hope that the board could be unified in a goal that would be laser focused on bringing these kids back up to speed. Being fully immersed in our community and our kids, many kids have fallen very far behind. It's not just a matter of some and a little bit of catching up. I mean, there needs to be a massive effort in bringing these children back into the realm of learning and growing and stretching. I'm concerned that, with so many having been disengaged this year, I think that the board is going to have to come up with some really creative, out-of-the-box ideas and solutions to get these kids up to speed this summer. If a kid has been disengaged all year, I'm not sure how we would expect them to be engaged during the summer without some really exciting, creative approaches. And so moving forward, of course, as I said, and I will continue saying, I believe that in public education, kids are best served in a school environment, in an in-person learning school environment. So my hope is that we will continue moving towards that, and certainly following guidelines and maintaining an approach that's healthy and safe for our students and our teachers, and all of the staff that's involved in running a school. But we've got to really get creative, I think, and I hope that the board can be unified in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wellauer. We'll now hear from Ms. Czyz on this issue of looking forward to the year ahead in a pandemic world. Ms. Czyz.
Yeah, I think we need to rally behind our administrators and teachers to get our kids back up to par. It's going to take a lot of work, especially those that have not, especially those that our district has not seen at all during this whole time. But also, too, for all of our kids that just got behind because maybe they don't learn on the computer well, or maybe their work wasn't put out in a way that they could retain it. So I think that rallying behind our administrators and our teachers and opening up communication and, be supportive of all those different factors going into play. It's going to take a lot in our community to get everything up and moving again the way it should be with our kids. They lost a lot this year, and I think if we need to be able to work together, make decisions together, to be able to bring everybody back up to where they are. I think that we need to come up across the board with maybe like a platform that everybody uses or something like that will help open communication up with the different schools. Having kids in all the different schools, it's hard to be able to follow everything that's happening everywhere. I feel like we need one voice to be able to communicate that out. I know that's part of the board's job, is to help communicate with the administration and with the parents and with the children. So I think we need a better voice in that. One thing that concerns me is that we have not brought back our high schoolers yet for 5 days. There's been no communication as to why. We have kids that don't have anything to do at all on Fridays, no classes, no work to do, nothing like that. And that concerns me right now as we are trying to move ahead and trying to move forward and looking forward to the future. I think we need to have open discussions about that and talk about it and figure out what the problem is there and move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Czyz. We'll now hear from Nate Garland on the issue of moving forward. And Mr. Garland, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Guy. I guess I would piggyback on something that Ms. Czyz just mentioned, and that's communication. As a board, a school board or a governing board has a certain amount of power, but amongst those powers, and perhaps primary of those powers, is communicating with school administration. I'd like to think that I'm sort of person that can ask tough questions and hold school administrators accountable, just like they hold teachers accountable. For example, Mr. Boyer, last week or the week before, the superintendent was quoted in your paper as saying that there's no connection between the rise in COVID cases among school-age children and returning to classroom instruction. Now, a question I would have for the superintendent is, what are you basing that on? Data should drive every decision that an organization makes, and that particular statement seemed to be lacking in a basis of data, of fact. Similarly, a raise for administrators, an effective 7% raise for administrators, was shepherded through very quickly over some objection of some board members quite recently. Where was the support for that, and why weren't board members given the appropriate time necessary to come to a concerned decision after absorbing that information? Finally, Guy, as a parent of a special education student, we were just informed that the BOCES program has removed all of their specialized rooms from buildings within the city of Auburn Enlarged School District. And now those kids are going to be bused up to Cato. So rather than receiving monies from BOCES to host those rooms in our elementary schools, our kids are going to have to be bused to a school district on the northern end of the Cayuga BOCES district. Why did that happen? Why has that not been effectively communicated by school administration? So again, asking tough questions of administration, I think, is one way that we can, as board members, ensure that school is safe and enriching for our kids in the fall.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. We'll now turn to Mr. Mahunik. You have 2 minutes on the outlook for the year. Mr. Mahunik.
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. There's no doubt there's been a loss of learning. But on the other side of that, there has been an influx of, as Ian mentioned, the stimulus money that's coming into the district. And 20% of that has to be dedicated to fixing the loss of learning. So we need to determine, or the board needs to determine what that number is. Lisa Green needs to determine that. And then give the administrators a goal of how do you best spend this money to make up for what these kids lost. They did a hybrid model. They weren't in school every day. As it was mentioned, on Fridays, the high school kids aren't doing tons of schoolwork. They missed out on some stuff. We need to fix that. And the funds are there to do it. Now, you tax the administrators and say, go do your jobs, come up with a plan, make this happen, bring the plan to the board for review. Because that's the board's role here. It's to review. It's not to micromanage. It's to review and make suggestions. And as Nate said, ask those tough questions. But we know where it's got to go. We know that we have to spend a significant amount of money. The money's there. We need to invest in our kids. We talk about the social emotional needs of our students, which I agree 110% with that. But also our adults. Our teachers are hurting too. Our teacher aides are hurting. Our maintenance people, our custodians, our bus drivers, they're all hurting. This was a tough year. We need to invest in them as well. And does that fall under the stimulus money? No, because it's not a loss of learning. But the district needs to make a concerted effort and put the funds where they need to be so that we can address all those needs. There is a considerable fund balance in the district right now. And we're going out for a 2.85% tax levy. Take that money that you have in the fund balance and invest that into the one-time stimulus things that we can do to help our adults too. Because if our adults aren't comfortable and they're not feeling their best or feeling like they're bringing the A game, then our kids are going to be the ones that pay. And they already lost enough. We don't need them to lose anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahunik. We'll finish off on this particular question of the year ahead with Ms. Rhodes, member of the board. What's the year look like in the future?
Well, one of the things, not just one of the things, to address the loss of learning, there are things being put in place, and there is a plan. They are going to be starting an after-school classes in the elementary buildings, and that's, I believe, is beginning next week. Summer school is also being developed. They are notifying parents of students that are going to be needing to come to summer school to build their skills. It's going to be elementary through high school. I also know that some of the high school classes, specifically like an English class or a social studies class, that if a student is failing to get credit, they would be doing some things online in that respect. But those are all things that are in the process of being developed. Social workers are going to be hired to be working with these students as well as supporting students. So those are all things that are in the works right now. And I know that as for next year, we are hiring. We are going to be hiring for our students to be supported in school. And the social emotional issue is a huge issue with the district. And I know that that's what they are looking at for our students next year.
Thank you. Before turning to Mr. Boyer, we want to let you know that we're about 2/3 of the way through our Auburn Enlarged School District Forum, brought to you by the Citizen and Cayuga Community College for 2021. We have Mr. Boyer of the Citizen asking questions, and we'll go to his third question. Mr. Boyer.
Okay, let's go quickly, or not quickly, but move on to a new topic. And I'd like to get your thoughts on the budget, because voters, in addition to picking 3 of you, have to vote yes or no on a spending plan. This year's has a 2.85% tax levy increase. And one of the things that this year's plan does have is a lot more state aid than what Auburn had been getting in recent years. So with all that and all that's in there, just share your thoughts on this budget and whether you think it's a good budget or not.
And Mr. Boyer, that's for everyone, and I'm assuming it's 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, I mean, I support this budget. I think that this is the first step in a long path to getting our kids up to what they deserve. We're spending 30% less now than the state average every year, and that piles up over the lifetime of a child. So that's bigger class sizes. That's less art and music. We have neighboring districts that have STEM labs from elementary all the way through. We have we've cut orchestra. We've closed buildings. So we are getting more in state aid this year, but it's still not what we deserve. So we on the advocacy committee are going to continue to fight for that. As far as the increase in the levy, and sometimes it's a little deceptive because people's assessments go up, and so the levy goes up in accordance with that. For the most part, we're below the cap. If you do not keep up with inflation, which is what basically the cap is, we will have to cut all of these positions that we're adding in years 5 or 6. So this short-term amount of money sets up a cliff for us. So we can make these kind of investments, but if we don't keep up with inflation, if we just did a 0 for 1 year, say this year, and then did 2% for the rest of the next decade, it's $11 million. We're getting $9 million in the stimulus. So we will have to cut and then go deeper in years 5 and 6. So it's really important that we make this investment. 40% of the money for our students comes from local sources, and 60% is from the state. So we do have to, when assessments go up, increase that levy. But I think that we've struck a good balance with not going over the tax cap. So yeah, I support the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. We'll now hear from Isabelle Wellauer on your view on the budget that is proposed for May 18th.
Yes, thank you. While I certainly support appropriate funding for our schools, our students, and our teachers, and all that comes with that, I also fully believe that any school board has a fiduciary duty to its citizens and taxpayers to be fiscally responsible. And certainly, based on the information I have, I haven't really dug into the details of the budget, but I do believe that establishing a budget that reflects prioritizing students is extremely important. I don't believe in adding tax burdens to our district families without putting forth every effort first to find other solutions and also keep them to a minimum. This has been a challenging year for our families. Many people were unemployed for a good portion of the year. Auburn has many sole proprietor-owned businesses, small businesses, family-owned businesses, and have taken huge salary cuts to help keep their businesses and families afloat. And again, I'm certainly in support of appropriate funding, and I fully acknowledge that our district is underfunded. In fact, my daughter Leah has been to Albany to champion for our schools to get the funding that they need, and that certainly should be continued to be focused on and worked towards. But this is the year, I believe, to give back to our Auburn families. If we don't have to raise the taxes to the 2.85 that is being suggested, then then we shouldn't. I don't believe that we should. I believe that this is a great opportunity for the board to say to Auburn families, thank you. Thank you for hanging in there with us. Thank you for working so hard to help educate your kids. This has been tough on everyone, economically, mentally, emotionally, academically. And so if this is the year that the board can gift its community, that it's here to serve, then that's what I believe we should do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wellauer. We'll now hear from Ms. Czyz Rachel Czyz on the issue of the current proposed budget.
I'm in favor of appropriate funding for our children as well. I think this was a extremely financially trying time for our community. And are we best allocating our funds in the district for our kids? That would be my question. With the poverty on the rise, we're asking struggling families while enduring the pandemic to sacrifice more money. Is there other ways that we could find money that is much needed? Like I know we have gotten state aid with coming in for the social workers and for the counselors, which obviously will be a huge help in the fall. Is there some other ways that we can navigate around getting funds? I think that from a family standpoint of view, the families have had their own children in their own homes this year. So that has increased all of our at-home family budgets, right? To be able to care for the kids here. So I just think that maybe there's other ways that we can come across getting money we need rather than by raising up more tax increase.
Thank you, Ms. Czyz. We'll now hear from Nate Garland. You have 2 minutes on the issue of whether you support the budget or not.
Thanks, Guy. I'll just start by saying, the entirety of my professional life, really, my salary has been paid by tax dollars, and I am incredibly, appreciative and respectful of that. So not only do I pay taxes, but I rely on taxes to feed my family, and with that comes a stewardship that Ms. Wellauer and Ms. Czyz have spoken about. That we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to protect the taxpayer. That being said, I absolutely support the budget as it is currently written. I agree 100% with Ian that this is really an inflection point, right? I think we all kind of feel that after living through this last year, as things are hopefully starting to get better, and we can pull ourselves out of this particular terrible pandemic year. Apply that to the educational system, we can finally begin to pull ourselves out of the gap mess that our politicians in Albany put us in 10 years ago. And with a smart reinvestment of tax dollars, I think we can really leverage the federal money coming in to return class sizes to a level at which they were when we were all in school, when school looked and felt a lot different to the student, to the teacher, and the parent. And for those reasons, I think we need to approve the budget as it is currently written.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. We'll now hear from Mr. Mahunik. You have 2 minutes on this issue of the budget.
Thank you, Guy. I do support the budget at the 2.85% because I'm afraid of the alternative. I'm afraid if the voters vote it down, you go to contingency, or you go out and you go to the budget again. We go to contingency, that's not good for our kids, that's not good for our families. I was disappointed in the budget process. I went to the budget meeting, the last budget meeting, and I give credit to Kathy and Sam because they both spoke out and wanted a 0% for the reasons that were already mentioned. Our families have been through enough. You heard your families, you've heard from your constituents, and 0 would have been a good thing this year to give something back to our families that have been helping out and educating their students. So thank you for advocating for that. Unfortunately, it didn't go through. A couple of the comments that really bothered me, one was by Mr. Phillips when he said, we don't want to leave any money on the table. Well, that's not your choice. Let me select if my money is going to be taken off my table. Taxpayers they've taken a hit this year. And then it was down to, it's only $4.50 a month. That's the price of a cup of coffee. Well, that's okay. That's my cup of coffee. let's not be so cavalier about a tax increase that we can just say, because I'm in a place where I can afford that cup of coffee, or I can let that money go off my table, that it's okay for all of our taxpayers. Those were pretty, and if that's the mindset of our board, we look into the future, the 2.85 is now going to be another 2% next year. Now we're at 4.85. Then it's going to be another 2%. Now it's 6.85. Then it's 8.85. And it's just going to continue to grow instead of looking at what can we do with the money that we have. If you can tell me one school district in the state and the country that is properly funded at this time, I would shake your hand, because I don't think any one of them think they're properly funded. But it is what it is. We have to work within the parameters that we have. We can advocate for it. We can ask for more. And whenever we get it, we just have to spend it wisely. But we can't say to our taxpayers, we don't want to leave anything on the table. It's just a cup of coffee. That's not right. It's not fair to our taxpayers. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mahunik. We'll now go to Kathy Rhodes, who got to vote on the budget, putting it before voters. Ms. Rhodes.
Yes, Auburn is underfunded. I agree with that totally. I also did go for the zero because I do believe our families have been hit very hard this year. Everything is going up. Food, gas, anything that families need is all going up. The one reason that I did go for the zero was I do believe that we could use our fund balance to subsidize our budget. We didn't have to go out and do the 2.85. We could subsidize our budget with this fund balance. And I think that that could have been part of our discussion. I just think that right now, with the way our year has been and with the pandemic, I think that we owed Auburn a gift. And that's the reason why I went for the zero.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. We'll now hear finally from Mr. Giangreco, who also voted on the budget, and I believe his vote was no in the presentation. Mr. Giangreco.
Thanks, Guy. Yes, I was adamantly opposed to the 2.85 right from the get-go. It's time to wake up and smell the coffee, everybody. This has been a tough year. Auburn has been like a ghost town, and I'm not saying this is going to fix the economy 100%. But everything we can possibly contribute, especially from the school district, goes a long way. You want to get people to be active with our school district, give them a break. Maybe some of them will start showing up at board meetings for a change. These are things that need to be done. You've got to, once in a while, turn around and say thank you to your community. They backed us on so many things. Like I said, the capital project that's going to be fully underway this summer. They came to our rally thousands of times over the years. Now we're in a position where we've got some money to say, look, we can take care of everything we need to do in the budget, which I fully support, except for the 2.85. We can take care of our kids. We can get them up to speed. I like Isabelle's remark about laser focused on that, and that's the way it should be. Right now, these kids need it, and the community needs a break. And I think it's going to go a long way down the road to say this board took the initiative to recognize that, recognize what the kids need, give them what they need, and also be respectful to the community for bailing us out on so many times. I love Auburn. I love what you've done for us. It's time to smell the coffee and give you something back.
Thank you, Mr. Giangreco. Believe it or not, when you're doing this, and we have gone through the number of questions we can get through from Mr. Boyer without going over time with closing statements. So, Mr. Boyer, I know you have a couple of more questions, but hopefully you will ask those through your reporter, Kelly, to these candidates in the Citizen over the next couple of weeks as people go to the polls on May 18th. So we want to thank you for that. We're now going to turn to closing statements, and we said we would go in reverse order of what we had started with. So Nate Garland, who is a first-time candidate for the board, has 2 minutes for his closing statement. Mr. Garland.
Thank you. The famous last words when an attorney promises to be brief, but I think I will, in fact, be brief. I'm asking for people's vote as a member of the Auburn Enlarged City School District because I think I can ask tough questions that hold administration accountable. As I said in response to a previous question, the administration of any entity, and particularly the school board here, or the school administration, asks for accountability, right, of teachers and of students. Someone needs to hold them accountable. And I believe that to be a primary concern for a board member. It's my job as an attorney to become knowledgeable about various aspects of life, to do research, to objectively come to an opinion and try to be fair in that. And I think I can bring all of that professional experience to the board, and I would like for folks to consider that when they are voting. And I ask humbly for Guy for your vote, Jeremy for your vote, and for the votes of the taxpayers and citizens of Auburn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. We'll now hear from Rachel Czyz, who is also a first-time candidate. Ms. Czyz, you have 2 minutes to close out as well.
I just want to thank you once again, Guy, for this opportunity to be here and to speak and to share. One of the reasons I decided to run is to ensure that there are parents of children in our district who are fighting and advocating for the children. I'm not suggesting that parents are the only voice to be had on the board, but I believe it should be a prominent voice. From what I can tell, there are 5 out of the 9 school board members who do not currently have children in the school district. 3 out of those 5 are the incumbents who are running for re-election right now. While they may have other strengths they bring to the table, they cannot say, with parents out there, that they have had to live with the direct impact of the decisions and or indecisions of district leadership, literally every day of this past year. Last year, when this pandemic began, we had children at every level of schooling in the district, elementary, junior high, and senior high, and next year we'll be in the same position for 3 more years. Last year, it is my desire to fight for our students, our families, and our taxpayers. The school union has endorsed 2 candidates, as far as I know, one who is the spouse of a teacher, a member of the union, and one who works with the union. One of them is running alongside a candidate who is corporate counsel for the city of Auburn, who would be responsible for any type of contract with the city of Auburn. If the union has their way, there will be 6 out of 9 board members who have direct ties or who have family members with direct ties to effects of the union contracts. I'm an advocate for our amazing teachers and support the work of our teachers and the union and what the union is doing in this district. I do, however, believe we need more voices on the board who are not beholden to the union or who will not be directly affected by the contracts with the union. They are fighting for what they think is important, and I don't blame them for doing so. I am fighting for the families of the district, for the taxpayers of the district. I am fighting for our children, and I hope I can count on your vote.
Thank you, Ms. Czyz. We'll now turn to Isabelle Wellauer, who has 2 minutes for her closing statement. Ms. Wellauer.
Yes, thank you. So this whole campaigning process has been very interesting. It's been a learning experience, and certainly I look forward to many more to come with regards to all of this. My goal, if I were to be blessed enough to be able to sit on this board, would be definitely to bring the kids back into school and bring them back up to speed with all that is involved in who they are. Establishing a budget that reflects prioritizing students and teachers, and community involvement. I believe the board would be more successful in its endeavors with input and support from our community, the community that we seek to serve. Just as the board holds administration responsible, I believe that the board should be held accountable by our community. That is who we're here to serve. I hope to strengthen the bridge between the board and our administration, and I also hope to strengthen the bridge between our board and our district families. Another thing that is very important to me is unity, And I hope to bring some professional decorum back to this board, where varying opinions and perspectives of each member are heard, respected, and valued. Our board needs unity, and it needs to collectively be willing to share a common goal of working as a team to find solutions and make necessary decisions for the positive growth of our district as a whole, rather than seeing things as divisive and seeing things as compartmentalized. I believe our school, our public education, is part of a whole puzzle of our community, and every decision needs to be made with our district families and our children at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wellauer. We'll now hear from Ian Phillips, who is completing his first term on the board. Mr. Phillips.
Thanks, Guy. I want to first start something that Mr. Mahunik said. I don't want to leave money on the table. I believe that was one of my colleagues that said that phrase, and I didn't repeat it at all. I mean, he must have misheard. I also want to say this is below the cap. Mr. Mahunik himself, when he was on the legislature, voted to exceed the cap. So we have to be aware that our records are important here. When we say things, we have to have the records to back it up. I also want to say, I think talking about the union or talking about our educators, and I'm proud to be endorsed by the union because the union is our district's educators' voice. We have to take what they've gone through as important as well. And our educators are not just educators. Most of them, including Mr. Mahunik, who I just talked about, they have students in our schools. They're also parents, so they taught hybrid. They taught their own kids at home, and then they went in and did it themselves. So I don't think this ever needs to be a voice of one segment or another. We all want what's best for kids. We've all repeatedly said we want to prioritize kids. Whether you vote for me or not is a lot less important. We've got good candidates here than if you vote for this budget, because this budget puts us on the right track for our students. If you believe our kids deserve to be in the bottom 2% of per pupil spending in the state, then don't vote against this. Then vote for this budget. If you don't believe that should continue. If you think that our kids don't deserve it, that's what you're saying when you say you don't support this budget. So that's all, we have to make this investment for our students to get our students what they deserve, which is average funding. This is $4 a month. And it's because people's assessments went up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. We'll now hear from Sam Giangreco, who has served 3.5, a little bit over that, terms on the Board of Education. Mr. Giangreco, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you, Guy. Well, first of all, Rachel, I just wanted to tell you, though my kids are all grown up and not in schools right now, I've got 10 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, so watch out, they're coming through. And thank you for bringing that up. Also, like I said, I've been adamantly opposed to the 2.85. I think we're going to be able to do just what we need to do to bring these kids up to speed, and I'm completely focused on that. I feel this, folks. I've been here for a long time. I think I've served you well. I know your children. I know you folks. I listen to you. And when I'm asked who I listen to when I make my decisions, basically, I listen to my children and my family. But, my children have a different perspective on things. And they make a lot of sense. And I don't see them all the time. They're all over the place. But it makes a lot of sense to me what their opinions are. And I listen to the kids of Auburn. I see them a lot. A lot of them I've known since I had them when I was a custodian at Seward Elementary School. And I see them this day, and the biggest accomplishment is to see them graduate and go across that stage. So I'm asking for your support once again. I know you. I know what the community wants. I have a pulse on the community. I need your vote, and I'm asking respectfully for that once again. And as a musician, in the words of the old Wilmer Alexander and the Dukes, give me what. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giangreco. We'll now hear from Kathy Rhodes, who is completing her third three-year term on the board. Ms. Rhodes, you have 2 minutes as well.
As I said in the beginning, the school district is a reflection of the community. I believe that education has changed. It's just changed from when we were in school, and I graduated in 1971 from Auburn High School. I was the first graduating class. Education is multifaceted. It's not just reading, writing, and math. It's interwoven strands of technology, problem solving, discussion of issues, consensus, and the ability to work as a team. Many people have mentioned that today, as working as a team. And that's what we need to be teaching our kids. Students need these skills to be prepared to face the workforce and further their education in college. I believe I can be a voice for a strong educational system in the district. I hope people come out to vote, and they vote, for the people that they choose. I'm thrilled that there are 8 candidates. I really am, because it gives people a choice, and I think every one of you brings something different to the table. So I wish you all luck, and I hope that whatever comes out of the vote is what the people in the community want. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. We will finish off where we started with Patrick Mahunik, who will have 2 minutes for his closing statements, and then we'll wrap up. Mr. Mahunik.
Thanks, Guy. Yes, your record does not go away. It is permanent. It stays there. So here's a little bit more on my record. I graduated from Auburn High in 1993 with plans to go to the Culinary Institute of America to be a chef. I was so impressed by one of my history teachers that I changed my plan. That one teacher made a huge difference in my life. That's why I'm running for the board. I went on to become a history teacher. I went to North Carolina, taught middle school English and social studies for 2 years. I moved back to New York State, raised my family. As soon as my kids were old enough to play sports, I coached baseball. I coached basketball. I coached instructional football for Pop Warner. I ran a league, a basketball league for kids. My life has been completely dedicated to kids. And as time went on in my teaching career, I realized that the impact I'm having in my classroom wasn't enough. I wanted to do more. So I went into administration. I went to the dark side, as all my teacher colleagues call it. But I went with a different mindset. I went there with the idea that every decision I make will be in the best interest of kids. And you can come down to Newfield and you can ask any one of my teachers in the middle school or the high school. At every faculty meeting, whenever we have to make a decision, the last thing I ask them is this what's in the best interest of kids? And that's what our board needs. What is in the best interest of our kids? Not what's in the best interest of a certain union or this or that. Yes, unions are important and teachers obviously deserve the rights that they are giving, and the contracts need to be followed. That doesn't matter to me. I have numerous teachers that have supported me. I don't need a union endorsement to say that's okay. So bottom line is, I support educators, I support the maintenance workers, I support everybody that works in the district, because in the end of the day, when they put their head on the pillow, all of them have to ask the same question. Did I do what's good for kids today? And as long as they can do that, this district will go in a great direction. It's an amazing district. It's given me my livelihood. It's given my kids a future. My wife is an employee of the district. She's a principal at Seward. I'm not afraid to say that. She's a dedicated employee. We don't talk shop at home. We don't discuss what goes on in the district. That's our downtime. That's our kid time. We don't do that. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Mahunik, and thank you to all of you, as well as Mr. Barlow, who could not join us. But we appreciate that you put yourselves out there to run. That's not always easy, and we appreciate your commitment to this community as well as the district, whatever results on May 18th. We also thank Mr. Boyer, as usual, for his thoughtful questions. He's been doing this for, I think, 15 plus years with me, and we appreciate that. We also thank Major of the Auburn Enlarged School District for her assistance, especially this year when we've had to deal with Zoom. Her help has been invaluable. And finally, our viewers, for taking the time to listen over the last hour and a half to the candidates for the school board. The polls are 18th from 7 to 9 p.m. Voters can vote at Auburn Junior High, at Casey Park, Owasco, and Seward Elementary Schools. Our spring 2021 semester here at Cayuga Community College. We'll be taking the summer off. Our students just ended their classes today on May 3rd. We'll return in the fall with a series of candidate forums for the Cayuga County Legislature and the City Council. We'll return with Inside Government and Beyond the Front Page. Before I do want to thank the staff here at the college for this type of forum to become a reality. If it was not for Professor Steve Keeler, Doug Brill, and Jeff Sesniak, we wouldn't have these types of forums during the school year, and we appreciate their work. On behalf of the Community College and the Citizen, we want to thank you for watching, urge you to exercise your right to vote on May 18th. Have a good night, have a great tomorrow, and be safe out there.
All good?
Yep, I'm gonna. Yeah, I just.
Great, thank you. Good
Yep.
luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great work, Doug. That's off for now.